Welcome, petals. If your life revolves around flowers, this is the podcast for you.
The fewer ingredients you have, the more important the selection is. You can't then just choose 10 different ingredients to serve a different purpose. You've then got to find perhaps 3 ingredients that satisfy all that criteria.
Before we dive in, we welcome Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers as our Season 3 sponsor. Blooming in New Zealand since 1992, they're a vibrant, modern wholesale business, bringing premium hand-selected blooms to florists and retailers nationwide. Hello, and welcome back to Flower Farming in New Zealand. Today I have an Australian guest, Cerina from Perth. Welcome, Cerina. Welcome to Flower Farming in New Zealand.
Hello, Jo, and thanks for inviting me here today. And hello from over the ditch, if that's what they still call it.
We'll call it the ditch. We should probably call it a trench if we're flower farming, shouldn't we?
That's true.
But that's all right.
Very true.
The other side of the fence. Yeah?
Yes.
Now, many of you probably won't know Cerina. I met Cerina through our Substack accounts, I think. I think that's where we first met.
We did.
And Substack is just a hosting platform for newsletters and writers and creators of all different kinds. And that's where we met, which is fantastic. And Cerina can talk more about her Substack in a minute. But Cerina is a florist. And my fascination with Cerina's life is the fact that she is prepared to put so much time and energy into building her own skill set. I think, is that how you'd call it? You'd describe it, Cerina, with all the training and the things that you do?
I guess it is. I had never really thought about it that way. I tend to get fixated on something and then I just manifest and make it happen. But my relatively short journey in floristry has branched out and taken me into other areas.
And some pretty amazing places too. You just have to keep listening to hear where Cerina has been, because
very much.
It just fascinates me. So if we go back a step, when did flowers first take over your life and how did that happen? What triggered it?
That's a good question. I thought about that quite deeply and I tried to figure out exactly what instigated my fascination with flowers. And I couldn't put my finger on it up until my children were actually attending their school balls. And I guess I was wanting something quite bespoke for their buttonholes and corsages. And so I pretty much designed something up and found a florist who would entertain that, but was really quite disappointed in the outcome. And so I got a little bit frustrated with that and I thought, well, gosh, I could have done that. Like we do with lots of things when we say, oh God, I could have done that. But of course, I've now experienced the other side of that and appreciate exactly where the florists come from. When
but Cerina being Cerina, you said, I could have done that better.
Well, yes, and now I do find myself actually doing a lot of buttonholes and corsages for people, and I do make them quite bespoke because I can understand exactly where they're coming from.
And you don't mind doing the fussy wiring and things like that?
I actually don't. A lot of florists don't like to do them, but because I commenced training right at the beginning of COVID, we found that I had a lot of spare time at home on my hands. And we'd just been taught how to do the wiring. And so I found myself standing in my little humble laundry studio that my husband built for me at that time, just wiring. And I got reasonably good at it. So I even find now when I'm freelancing, the girls hand that duty over to me. But I do quite enjoy it. I really do.
So, sorry, if we can back up a step again, then you said you did your training just before COVID or during COVID, was it?
Just before COVID. We found ourselves in February of 2020, gone on a big holiday to celebrate my son's finishing of high school. And I found myself asking them as we flew back during the February. My husband, we'd left him in Florida to go off and do a business meeting. And I'd asked my daughter, I said, well, what are you looking forward to this year? And she said, I'm looking forward to finishing my 3rd year of psychology. And my son said, I'm looking forward to starting my engineering first year and getting to meet a whole lot of new people. And a bell went off in my head and I thought, oh, I'm going home to do domestic duties. And I thought, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that.
That's so funny.
But the 3 years prior, I dedicated a lot of my children's life to look after them, and I have no regrets in doing that at all. But it put my whole professional life completely on hold and somewhat to an end. So in the last 3 years of his education, I thought long and hard and deep about what I wanted to do beyond my children's education.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of what that was going to be until just before this holiday. I thought, I've got to find something. I've really got to find something. And so I looked up, and I'd studied for many, many years. And I thought, if I'm going to change a career or I'm going to start a new career, I need to be educated. And I looked online, and floristry came up, and I thought, I can do that. So the day we landed from this holiday, I contacted TAFE, which is our adult public education system.
Right. So I was going to ask
signed
you
up.
that. So can you explain more about what TAFE is? You say it's adult education
So
only.
it is adult education only.
Yeah.
It offers a whole lot of hands-on courses. So TAFE is the only place where you can learn floristry publicly in Perth. There's a couple of other private institutions that you can study with. And I signed up and became completely obsessed. I studied part-time for 1.5 years for the Certificate 3, then continued with the skill set in Certificate 4 and finished that. And that's how I received my training.
And did you from there go straight into freelancing, or did you do some retail floristry first?
In 2020, I started up my own company business. I knew at that stage I did not want to be a shop florist. Just from the day dot, I never knew I'd be a shop florist, but I wanted to be in more events. So I started my business. And part of the course required us to do work experience. And I only knew of 3 florists that I knew of their style and was interested in getting involved in. And I emailed each of those. One of them had actually come and created a large hanging installation in our home for my husband's 50th birthday. And her name is Beck from Fox and Rabbit. And she was one of the 3, and she responded to my email. And she said, look, I've never taken on any TAFE students, but yes, I remember you. I remember the job. Please come and let's talk. And I met with her, and I did my 20 hours work experience with her, and I have been with her ever since. So she asked me to stay on, and I freelance probably, it depends on the season, but it could be 2-3 days a week during the main wedding season and Christmas and Mother's Day seasons. And I love it. I love being part of a team, working with the girls. We do big wedding events, big corporate events, and I just love it.
Can I ask you then, because you're in Perth, which is obviously very different temperature-wise, particularly probably from me here in central Otago, but
Yes.
is your wedding season spring and autumn, or do you go all the way through?
We go all the way through. So it starts up probably around about September, October through to the end of April. So it's actually a very long season.
That's really cool. It's interesting. Ours starts also in September, but for me, I finish in March because like last night we had a frost. So I can't promise that I can provide flowers, and I don't do weddings where I don't grow the flowers myself. I don't
Yes.
buy in flowers. So we only use flowers that we grow, flowers and foliage. So you freelance for Beck. What does freelancing encompass for you? What do you do when you're freelancing?
When I freelance, I'm usually given about 2-3 weeks notice, which is great because I still travel a lot with my husband. And freelancing actually fills a big gap for me because I travel so much with him for his work. I can't commit to any weddings of my own in 2 months' time, let alone a year's time. So it fills a big gap for me. So when I come back, I ring up and I let them know my availability, and they book me in usually on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday for weddings. And I never know what I'm going to be doing until I turn up that day, which is actually quite relaxing because
And exciting.
it is exciting because if I'm doing my own work, I've prepared a brief and a design and I've ordered flowers in advance and I'm preparing for that. But when I'm freelancing, I just don't know what I'm doing. I rock up on the day, bring my lunch and my water bottle and a hat just in case we're outside. And I start. We sit down, we run through the brief for the day. All the flowers are there ready to be conditioned. And if it's a wedding on a Saturday, we do all of our conditioning on a Thursday and we start making on a Thursday, continue making on a Friday, and then finish off on a Saturday morning, and then we bump in.
Do you have a lot of outdoor weddings considering your climate?
We do, surprisingly, which can be very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, challenging.
It is very challenging. So obviously water sources are important. We're also obviously trying to not work with floral foam. So that's also another challenge to make sure that everything has its water source. I suppose we are used to choosing flowers depending on the location of the wedding as well, whether it's indoors or outdoors. And of course, we know that very early on. And yeah, I think we just are used to knowing what flowers will have the longevity in a warm climate.
How would you describe your own design style and what sort of flowers do you love that make that style happen for you?
Personally, I guess I look at my style in 3 different areas. I love monochromatic arrangements. I also like things en masse, and I also love arrangements that have 3 ingredients. For me, a design that has a lot of different materials all mixed up is very confusing to my eye. I like to be able to focus on one thing and fully appreciate it. So my style is also probably quite sculptural as well. And although it sounds like a very simple system, the fewer ingredients you have, the more important the selection is. So from a floristry point of view, if you want something that has shape and line, it needs to be something perhaps long and narrow. But at the same time, you also want that same material to be a focal element as well. And so you can't then just choose 10 different ingredients to serve a different purpose. You've then got to find perhaps 3 ingredients that satisfy all that criteria. So it's actually more complicated.
Yes, and it's how you put those flowers together that's actually going to make the difference. And the vessel that you use, I know you are very pedantic about, if that's a fair word, about your choice of vessel, and that's obvious in your photographs that you put on your Substack account, that you have so carefully thought about the vessel that you're going to use.
Absolutely.
So that it's fitting not just for the flowers but for the setting. And I love that it's such a thoughtful process for you to get to that point. Now, I know, again, from your photos and what I've seen, that you love using Australian natives. Do you have a favourite flower? It doesn't have to be a native flower, but do you have a favourite?
Yes, I enjoy natives, and we have good access to native flowers here. And UAE is the wildflower capital of the world, so it would be crazy not to. And also, I think from an international viewpoint as well. And even though Australian wildflowers are becoming more available overseas, I think it's a good marketing strategy as well for Australians to use Australian natives. But in terms of my personal favourite flower, it would have to be water lilies.
Wow.
So water lilies, one word, apparently. I've been educated.
Okay. All right.
There is an Australian native water lily, and apparently the whole thing is edible as well.
Who tried it?
Well, apparently it's been part of the Indigenous culture in Australia for tens of thousands of years, and they use much of the water lily in a lot of their ceremonies.
Okay.
And they've used parts of the water lily, or have in the past, as part of their food source. And I actually did a story on the Luca Creek water lily farm, which is a farm down south in Margaret River. And I was fascinated to learn all about this. Kathy and Martin Staines run this flower farm down there, and with their black Labrador Holly, who loves being in the water ponds, they gave me a good outline of the process of how they grow and process water lilies to be distributed both to Perth and across to Melbourne and Sydney. And they told me this whole fascinating story about water lilies.
So is that story on your Substack channel?
It is. I have written about
Okay,
them.
I will make sure we put in a link to that. That's really interesting what you say, though, because you start talking about the Australian wildflowers, and I'd asked you about outdoor weddings. So it kind of starts to link together that it's totally possible. Here's me thinking that it's way too hot and dry for you to be able to do, mass weddings or things like that. But then if you've got wildflowers that will grow naturally in your climate, they will stand out, or they will stand
Absolutely.
up to being
Yeah.
out of water way better than lots of other things.
Yeah. Most flowers, even native flowers, we will put in water as well.
Okay.
Just to help for the day. But in terms of large installations, if there's any number of flowers that can be out of water for the day, we'd definitely put native flowers in that situation. Majority of large weddings would probably be indoor. But particularly receptions can be outdoors, and we could have standing installations, which would be fine for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Okay. So many of the things that we're sort of referencing you have written about in your Substack channel, but how did writing actually become part of your whole floristry and flower way of life?
Well, writing, I've never enjoyed English, to be honest, and I'm not even a big reader, but it came about. I travel a lot with my husband for his work, and we have spent in the last 5 years a lot of time across Australia, but also mainly in Europe, and in particular Norway. And he had asked me, just as I started my business, he said, well, what are you going to be doing now that the kids can look after themselves? And I looked at him and I thought, well, I'm going to start a floristry business. I've just started this company. And looked at me and he said, well, how about you come traveling with me? And I thought, well, that's a fairly attractive offer. I think I'll probably take that up. So my plans to really ramp up my floral business kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. But so I would travel with him probably 3-4 months of the year. And this one particular trip, I took with me a copy of Flowers Magazine Australia. And in flicking through that magazine one day, sitting in Oslo, I came across an advertisement that was looking for contributors, either in one article or on an ongoing basis. And I thought, well, that particular trip we were booked to go to the Blumenhaus Tulip Festival just outside Amsterdam. And I thought, I could write about that. People might be interested in reading about that. And so I had to Google up how to pitch to a magazine editor because I had absolutely no idea. And I looked it up and I sought a little bit of confirmation from another flower friend. So thanks, Kerry Kelly, for your inspiration and confidence. And I drafted up an email to the editor and I sent it off. And in about an hour, I received a response back to say,
Wow.
yes, please, can you just write about, anything flower based on any of your trips? And that was about 2.5 years ago. And ever since, we've continued travel and we've continued being able to attend flower festivals and workshops since then. And I've just continued writing. So I think I have around about 12 articles under my belt now with Flowers Magazine Australia. So, so that's how the writing started.
And is that what made you start your Substack channel then? Being accepted by the magazine gave you the confidence to start your own writing channel?
It's certainly helped. I guess it gave me an opportunity to put out there what I was seeing, and I enjoy being able to share what I see and experience out there. Substack, I hadn't even heard of Substack until my husband's boss's wife had said to me, she was also in Oslo at the same time, and she said, why don't you start your own Substack? And I said, I have no idea what that is. So I looked it up. Explain. So I Googled that, what's Substack, and I looked into the other platforms, WordPress and all those other ones. And I thought, gosh, do I want to start up another social media platform? I thought, I have Instagram and I'm not great at it. And I have Facebook and I really don't like Facebook, to be honest. I thought, do I really want to throw myself into that again? And I thought, well, I kind of have the basis. I can repurpose what I'm writing with with the magazine into just repurpose it into Substack. So I thought I'll give it a go. I said to myself, I'll give it a year. I'll commit to writing once a week for Substack, and after a year, I'll have a look at it again, see how I feel. And then if I want to continue, I will. And if I want to give it away, then I know I've given it a good shot at it.
Where does the name The Flower Scout that you use for Substack, where does that come from?
That's another good question. It's a bit like coming up with an Instagram handle. It's like, do I go for a really cool name that has nothing to do with what I do? Do I come up with a really obvious name? Do I use my own name? And that's how I came about my Instagram handle. I thought, well, there's very few people that have the name Cerina, so that kind of stuck. The Flower Scout just came about by just Googling, really. Just finding out what words kind of best described what I was doing, and I came up with that. It was obvious, it was catchy, it was short, and it kind of stuck.
How it came across to me was that you go scouting looking for workshops that you can attend, flowers that you can celebrate. So you're scouting looking for
I'm
things.
looking for it, yeah.
So it made sense to me. I love it though. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was kind of obvious. I thought, well, let's not try and come up with any cool name and just go with the flow.
And it's an easy name to remember. And I think sometimes we can be too clever and we lose ourselves in being clever. But
Exactly.
No, I like that.
Exactly.
Love the growing but over the constant hustle for buyers? Our partners at Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers can help with that. Juggling dozens of tiny retail accounts or losing your weekends selling at the local market takes time and energy. By partnering with Fresh Cut, you get instant access to florists and supermarkets nationwide. Selling wholesale means a reliable income, and the best part, you get your time back. Simplify your business and focus on what you do best, growing gorgeous blooms. There's excitement ahead with big ideas blooming, but why not visit Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers at wholesaleflowers.nz to see how easy it is to become a supplier. Fresh Cut, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. Now back to the show. Now, you have chased flowers all around the world, scouted the world for flowers. How do you decide what makes either a workshop or a festival worth going to? Because you have been to Madrid, you've been to Australian-based workshops, you've been to
Mexico,
Chelsea, and I just find it fascinating that you even find these things are on. What makes you decide which ones you're going to go to?
Originally, it started out, it was based on where we were travelling at the time.
Yeah,
and so my husband, Gary's very enabling. I'll say to him, hey, I know we're going to London and it just happens to be my birthday over Chelsea Flower Show. Can we pop in? And so he's always changed our sort of travel plans to fit in with his work, but at the same time, if it can fit in with attending a workshop or attending a flower festival, he's always made that happen for us. So originally, we were very fortunate to go to Chelsea Flower Show. Or the first one I think I attended was the Kuchenhof Tulip Festival, and which is like a tulip Disneyland. It's not particularly natural in its appearance, but it's very impressive. And what I found the most impressive is the timing of the planting. It's some 7 million bulbs started to be planted, I think, in December, and they're planted in a series so that when the festival is on over I think it's like a 6-week period, during any 1 week, there is a mass of tulips. And even the ones that have died off are quickly trimmed up and neatened up, and you'd never know that they had expired. It's just fascinating how the timing of the planting just makes it such an eye-opening experience. So that was the first one, and I think my husband very quickly got the gist of loving it almost as much as me. So that's what started us off, and I think the next trip we were going via London during Chelsea Flower Show, and Chelsea in Bloom is also running at the same time. So that was my first experience with that one. And one that did come up quite by accident was we were in Lisbon in Portugal, and Gary had said to me, oh, look, we need to be in Madrid next week, but, what do you want to do on the weekend? And I said, funny you should mention that, because Festival Flora in Cordoba in Spain is on this weekend. Can we go? So he organised our travel, so we flew into Madrid and jumped on a train and made our way down to Cordoba and saw our first festival, Flora, which just happens to be probably my favourite festival of all,
Really?
to be honest.
Why? What's
Why?
so special?
There's only 5 invited floral designers, guest designers to come and install, and they are massive installations, and they're also quite contemporary in their design, and each of the installations are in their own historic courtyard in the historical precinct of Cordoba, and it's entirely free to the public, and you can walk in and around them as many times as you want over that extended weekend, and it's very inspiring. And you can also go and sit and watch them build it, and that's another thing that also
That would interest
excites
me.
me as well, actually seeing the
Yeah.
mechanics
Yeah.
behind what they're doing.
And the thought
Yeah.
processes, because even though they will have drafted it out and everything is planned,
Yep.
nothing ever goes to plan. So it would be fascinating to watch them working through that process, particularly with massive public installations like that
Yes.
obviously have to last a few days. It's not just a
Exactly.
couple of hours.
Yeah. They'd been planning them for at least a year and building all the mechanics behind it and ordering flowers and so forth.
So when you decide on which workshop you're going to attend, I know you take Gary's travel into account, but do you actually look for workshops that suit your style, or do you follow a particular designer? Like, I know you've met Passion Flower Sue and you've met lots of other designers at various workshops you've been to. But are you looking to what they're doing or to where Gary's going and what you can fit in?
We've got to a point now where these workshops aren't always where we would like them to be. So travel for me now, and he tags along with me now rather than me tagging along with him.
Love that.
Yeah. So now, for example, we went to Flower House Mexico in Mexico City in January of last year. And that is probably my favorite workshop, to be honest. That is a combination of, again, 5 or 6 floral designers who come in and volunteer their time entirely for free. And it's the students that pay for the course, for the 3-day course, but the money from that goes to a charity that's local to Mexico City, which is lovely. And so that I find really inspiring, and it's almost treated like an education based on floristry, but also based on giving as well.
Yes.
So we tacked on a bit of a holiday to that one. And then this year I actually travelled without him, much to his disappointment, to Madrid Blooms in Madrid. And I did bring along my freelancing boss, Beck, as well, to Madrid Blooms. And again, that was a 3-day workshop, which was, again, all inspiring and fascinating.
Yeah. It's just the opportunities, I suppose, 2 things. You have to be prepared to go looking for them, and you have to be prepared to invest in your own education and skill set.
Exactly.
I think that's something that we're perhaps lacking in New Zealand, that the opportunity to do those things. I mean, but I know that you had a fantastic one in Perth, didn't you? Great to meet other local florists and use local flowers.
Yes.
For a workshop, another completely different way of working. So which was the workshop where you did the corn stalks?
That was Flower House Mexico, and my designer was Frida Kim, and I've attended a workshop with Frida previously in London, and I love her work. So we didn't actually end up working with any flowers at that workshop. So it was 3 days of working with corn.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what we were working with until we arrived. The expectation was that it was going to be flowers, but it wasn't. Frida very much thinks outside of the square. And because I'd done a workshop with her before, I knew somewhat.
It would be unusual.
It would be unusual. And so, yes, our botanic was corn, dried corn cobs with the husks on, but also we had fresh husks as well, and we tore them up into little strips and we made hanging installations with them, and then we made these massive dried corn towers, and then we peeled off the individual corn kernels and placed those at the bottom of the towers as well. So yeah, it was very inspiring.
It's fantastic, really, isn't it? It's just such a a great way to learn, but to feed your artistic soul, talking to other people who are learning and enjoying the same thing that you are.
Absolutely.
So, do you have any other floral designers that are on your list, or a flower festival you want to go to?
My wish list. I still have quite a few on my wish list. I would love to go and do a workshop with this Blumenhaus, who are based in Singapore. They have a very wild sculptural design base, and they also love their tropical flowers and foliage. I also love foliage as well.
Yeah.
Singapore. Emily Thompson is a floral designer in the US. She also has a very wild design style, and I'd love to do something with Emily. But I recently saw Per Benjamin, who is a well-known floral artist, and he was up in the Ice Hotel in Sweden, and he was holding a workshop. I'm not sure if it was a workshop or a festival, but they had flowers that they were installing into ice blocks inside the Ice Hotel. I've been to the Ice Hotel before and stayed there, and would never stay inside an ice hotel again. And I really struggled with the cold. But I would love dearly I would turn up to that workshop in a heartbeat. So Per, if you're listening, if you get to hear this anyway, I'm manifesting this. You invite me, you put it on again, I'll be there.
You'll be there.
I'll be there.
What did you think of the recent Melbourne Flower Festival?
Melbourne Flower Festival, this was my third one I'd attended, and both my children live in Melbourne now. So
good excuse.
Which is a good excuse to go over, catch up with them, and then spend some time at the show. And it's always an eye-opener. Unfortunately, I didn't get much of a chance to go outside and actually visit the gardens. I had some writing duties to do with the floristry design that was going inside the beautiful Royal Exhibition building. And there's quite a few florists now that I know who were exhibiting, so I wanted to catch up with them. And so it's always an eye-opener because there's a lot of professional florists that enter into the competitions, but there's also quite a few competitions designed for students as well. So it's always nice to see them coming through. And it's also nice to see the professionals doing it as well. Really, commercial floristry is quite different to floral artistry, I would like to say. But it's fascinating. There's things that you may not like and other things that you love about it, but I always find there's something to gain out of it. Even if it's something you don't like, I don't ever want to do that. So
at least you know that. Yeah.
At least you know that. Exactly right. Yeah.
There was a group of New Zealand flower farmers who went over together and toured and went to it and enjoyed it. And I've seen lots of posts from other flower farmers who weren't part of that group but were there, and they loved it. But they loved the growers' alley or avenue or whatever it was, where all the growers.
It's beautiful.
They were impressed by that because it just showed the collaboration of all the growers, because it wasn't one grower trying to do everything. It was lots of different growers.
Yes.
But they had a ball, basically, and they went to the standard market that everyone goes to, the flower market as well, because our markets really, by comparison, are tiny.
Yes.
So I think it was an eye-opener. There might have been some green-eyed people wandering around Melbourne, and they'd have been Kiwis.
Well, that's another thing. The markets. We have a very small market here in Perth as well.
Mm.
But that's another thing I like to go and see when I'm in a big city is the wholesale flower market.
Absolutely.
And the biggest one I've come across is the market in Seoul. That is fascinating. It's in two enormous buildings, multi-story buildings, and they sell the flowers on the floor, but also there's levels above that sell all the sundries as well, and also massive buildings of just orchids that you can go and buy in plants and cut orchids. So that was always fascinating. And Mexico City, the wholesale flower market there is insane. Open 24 hours a day, flowers.
My jaw just dropped.
I know. 24 hours a day, there'll be aisles and aisles of flowers, and then you'll come across aisles of piñatas.
Okay, just why?
Yes, and that's fascinating in itself. And also the wholesale plant markets as well in Mexico City is a real eye-opener that you would love.
It's a good thing I'm not going to Mexico. I'd never be able to bring any of the material home. So
well,
I mean,
exactly.
it's just a matter of being able to enjoy it and move on, which is sometimes a good thing because, as you say, you learn something from looking. It's either something you love or something you hate, but you've learnt something from it, which
Exactly.
is
Yes.
all worthwhile.
And
Yeah.
this is what frustrates me about somewhat being in Australia, and it would be the same in New Zealand. Our quarantine laws are so strict for very good reason, don't get me wrong, but we can't bring anything back.
Our quarantine laws are in the process of changing, and more cut flowers are being allowed into the country, imported.
Interesting.
Which is interesting, and I hope it doesn't backfire on either the farming industry or the floriculture industry, because it could be catastrophic if it goes wrong. But we'll just have to wait and see. You're hoping that somebody higher up the chain has done their homework.
We probably have not a dissimilar situation here in Perth. Our ability to grow flowers here is difficult due to our climate. Yeah. And yet there's always pressure on buying local. And there is, from my experience, there is a growing number of flower farmers in Western Australia who are providing a wider variety of flowers. But there is still an enormous amount of flowers that we import, particularly roses. I'm not aware of anyone that grows roses in WA. And I'm only aware of one supplier in Australia that brings roses over to Perth. Essentially, wow. we have one Australian supplier here in Perth, which is a shame.
So you can't easily even transport flowers between states, though, can you?
No.
There are restrictions.
There are restrictions again. We do receive, I couldn't tell you the percentage of flowers that we receive, that we import, but we do import from Taiwan, Malaysia, Ecuador, Kenya is obviously where the majority of roses come from. Yeah,
the whole accessibility and supply algorithm is so hard to keep up with, to know then from a grower's point of view, if these flowers are going to be allowed to be imported, should I even be bothering to grow those if they're going to be able to be available to florists and event florists at a fraction of the price that I can grow them for locally because of our climate?
Exactly. And we would all love to buy local flowers because for any number of reasons, but we just don't have the growing climate and the choices in which to choose from. So it does very much limit your designs if you are only using local flowers.
Yes.
And subsequently, we will order in flowers from over east and then order them in from overseas as well in order to create the designs that our customers are asking for.
Yeah. And the customer is always right. Yeah, they're paying the bills at the end. So with all the workshops and the flower festivals and everything you've been to, the weddings that you've done, is there a pinch me, a standout moment, oh my goodness, moment in your floristry life that you'll always treasure?
I wrote an article and was accepted for the online journal for Blumenhaus, which is a Scandinavian botanical art review magazine. And I wrote about Flower House Mexico because it had that combination of beautiful flowers and it had the combination of the floral designers volunteering and the money generated going back into charity. And I was also able to use the professional photos by Corbin Gherkin as well. And
it helps.
Her photography is just divine, rather than relying on my little snaps on my iPhone.
Yeah.
So that was very helpful. So that was a pinch me moment. What else would there have been? Flower House Mexico is another standout workshop for me. Just meeting all the different designers and just, I guess with any workshop, you're there with a group of people that have such a deep passion for flowers. And even though you may not talk the same actual language, you still have that same flower language.
Connection. Yes.
Connection. And even if in Madrid, there was some people that only spoke Spanish or Portuguese, and we still grouped up together and we still tried to have a conversation based on flowers without actually using words, and worked quite successfully.
It's amazing what we can do when we're talking flowers and when you've got something that you can point to or explain just by doing rather than actually using language. Yes. It's not a bad thing to be able to do either by any stretch. I think it's great. So what events have you got coming up next? What's the next big item for you?
At the moment, Subi Blooms is a local flower festival which is held over Mother's Day. So it's held within one of the inner city suburbs that we have here in Perth. A flower friend of mine, Yoshiko Gunning, and I worked behind the scenes for Subi Blooms last year. And in working together, I said to her, oh, how about we get together and make a submission for next year? It's something we've never done before.
Yeah.
And she said, yeah, let's do it. So we put in a submission and we were accepted. So we are creating an installation using native flowers. So it's a large all-round installation.
As in walk around?
It is a full walk around, and it's in a public walkway between two buildings in Subi.
Okay.
And so we have commenced the mechanics on that based on the humble black bucket. I've got 46 of these.
Thank you, Bunnings.
So exactly, metal grids, and we're in the process of organising music and smoke machines and ordering flowers and insurances and all those things that you kind of don't expect to be involved in installations, but the things that we have to deal with. So we've got that coming up in May.
So what would you have native flower-wise flowering in May? Sorry, I'm totally ignorant of what you'd have available.
Yeah, no. It's a very good question. I've ordered a whole lot of proteas, which, although they're not Australian, we do grow quite a few here, which is fabulous. So I'm hoping that king proteas will be in by then, and pink ice should be in by then as well, and also a whole lot of bankshires as well we've ordered. Of course, as a flower grower, you know that we can't always predict when the flowers are going to be available.
I was about to ask you, what's your plan B? Yeah, what's plan B?
So we essentially put in an order some 6 weeks early in the anticipation that the flowers we want will be blooming at that time.
Mm.
And so it's a very anxious time because we know what we want. We have it. We have our design in mind. And so when you receive the email like 2 days before you expect to go and pick them up and they say, sorry, they haven't arrived, or we have problems with quarantine, they're going to be late, or they're just not available, we initially go into panic mode.
Yeah.
And I think no matter how long you've been in floristry, you have to learn to substitute.
Yes.
And so we quickly race into the wholesalers and we say, right, what can we substitute, big flowers for? And trying to substitute a king protea is pretty much impossible because there is nothing that is that like size. So we rely on grouping other larger flowers to get the large impact that we want. So I'm secretly hopeful that I had a wedding on the 12th of April last year, and the kings had just come in. So I was saved by that, but this is somewhat 3 weeks later, so they should definitely be
they
in
do
by
store. They store incredibly well, don't they? So
They do. And by the time the petals finally open up, or we force them open in some cases, they should definitely be here. But also it comes down to pricing. I mean, about a month ago, you could buy a single king protea coming in from Sydney, but they were $22 each, wholesale, plus GST. So when we prepare our budgets, we try and calculate on an anticipated price per flower, but when they actually come in, you might end up having to pay a little bit more than you'd originally anticipated. So we put a big flower order in. Hopefully 2 days before we go and pick it up, we are made aware of what was available and what was not available. And then we go into the wholesalers and we try and substitute those missing flowers as best we can. Also by that time, hopefully there's some things that hit the floor of the wholesalers that weren't anticipated, and it's something entirely new. So we'll go and buy something interesting that's hit the floor.
It's that volume, isn't it? Particularly size-wise of the proteas, but also if you're sticking to your preferred modus operandi of three types of blooms, if 2 of them aren't available, my stress levels are going through the roof here, and I'm not even involved.
Exactly.
Whoa.
It is. Fortunately, with this particular installation, we have probably 15 different types of flowers that we are hoping that's going to come in. So if something hasn't come in, it's no major drama. And because we haven't said we're going to have exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we've simply said it's going to be a selection of native blooms, which just gives us that flexibility.
Yeah. Very sensible.
To use whatever's available at the time.
Very, very sensible. So where do you think that your floristry will go next? And will floristry take over from writing about floristry, or will
Mm.
floristry still be your first love?
I think floristry was my first love. I still have a lot to learn in floristry. I've only been a florist for 6 years, and that's very much been on a very much casual basis as well. So while I call myself a floral designer, I still have so much to learn. In terms of writing, that's something that I didn't foresee originally, and I've kind of branched out because it was opportune at that time. I see myself continuing to write, and I'm also treating the Substack as a bit of a succession for me as well.
Yeah.
Event floristry, probably very much like flower growing, is a very physical job. I don't certainly pretend that event floristry is as hard as flower growing, not in any sense.
I think in a way it is. Having done both, I think it is. The stress levels are completely different and the physical work is
Yes.
completely different.
The physical work is there for me. It will be a challenge. Yeah, lifting the buckets, bending, squatting, ladder work,
Mm.
you know,
Wiring.
I won't,
You know-
wiring I can do. It's nice. I sit in my laundry and I twirl away.
Yeah.
But event floristry can be quite hard work. And if you're doing 3 days at a time, and a couple of months ago we had 3 weddings on the same day, and it can be quite exhausting. So I've kind of used my Substack as a bit of a succession plan to do a little less floristry heavy work and to move more into writing as I get older. And we'll be continuing to travel for years. So I hope that we'll be able to chase flowers as well.
Scout more flowers like the flower scout should. But I mean, that makes such sense to me because you don't have to be physically involved in the floristry to write about the floristry.
Correct. Yes.
So it just makes complete sense to me that that's the direction that you would choose to go in. Keep scouting flowers.
Exactly. And other opportunities have just come up. I've been invited to be a guest judge at the Perth Garden Show on Friday. So it's the first time I've ever been a judge. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I have my marking sheet, so I need to go back to my notes from my study and just refresh my memory on that. So
Do they provide you with a marking sheet?
they do.
Yeah. So every judge is basing their decisions based on exactly the same criteria.
Same things. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exciting times. Year of the horse for me, and I was predicted that I would have a year of movement, and it's happened. It's started
Excellent.
to happen, and we'll just see where it leads.
Serena, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I will make sure that I put in the podcast notes both your Instagram tag, so you'll have to start using it. Here's me putting pressure.
I will. Thank you. I could always do my reminders on my social media.
But more how you want the direction to go. I will point people towards your Substack because they have the opportunity there to learn if they want to learn, be a paid subscriber to learn even more. But it's the stories that you've written about some of the installations that you've seen and the workshops you've attended. I can't overemphasize how much it impresses me that you're prepared to go to that much effort to learn. And I think it's fantastic that you've taken those opportunities and realise their value. So
Yeah. There's a lot to learn in the world, and when you have a shared passion, people want to share what they know.
yes,
And I think we have a lot to learn from people overseas as well as people here in our own backyards. And I like to share that with people because not everybody has the opportunity like I've had to see all of these things and experience it. Yeah, I just love it. And I hope that people love reading about it as well.
excellent. I'm hoping that in the future we can organise floristry workshops and have you there as our Australian representative. How's that?
I would love that. Please invite me.
Thanks, Serena.
Thank you so much, Jo.
To stay in the loop, follow Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers on Instagram. Even with big changes coming to their website, their Insta feed is a place for behind-the-scenes looks and a sneak peek of what's blooming next. Fresh Cut Flower Wholesalers, established in 1992, evolving for tomorrow. That's it for this episode, Petals. I'm Jo Robinson and I'm signing off until next time, knowing that if we work together, we'll keep the New Zealand floral industry growing and flourishing.